The moment I corrected him, I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. It felt like the whole room inhaled at once and forgot how to breathe. I could still hear the crystal glasses clinking against the marble tables, clear as a warning bell in my ears. I work as a waitress at Tesoro Nascosto, a place where Chicago's most feared men gather every week, and I'm supposed to stay invisible, silent, useful, forgettable. But the night everything changed for me, I forgot that rule. My apron felt too tight as I approached their private dining room. It always felt too tight around him. Daario Cortez, young, powerful, terrifying in a quiet way that made the air shift when he entered any place. His men spoke English with heavy accents, ordering wine like they owned every bottle in the world. When one of the older men tried to show off his Italian, the wrong pronunciation scratched my ears so sharply that the correction slipped out before I could stop myself. Excellent. Non eccezionale, I said. Soft, automatic, stupid. The room froze. Forks hovered mid-air. Every man at that table stared at me as if I had flipped it over with my bare hands. The older man's face darkened with humiliation. He rose halfway from his chair, ready to put me back into whatever box he believed a waitress belonged in. Before he could speak, Daario raised one hand. Just one. And the man sat back down like obedience was wired into his bones. Daario's eyes found mine. Calm, focused, dangerous. My hand shook as I poured the wine into his glass. His gaze didn't move from me, not even when he took a slow sip. I felt exposed under that stare, like he could see every secret I had ever tried to bury. When he finally spoke, his voice was smooth and cold at the same time. Your manager failed to mention your other qualities. I swallowed hard. My apologies, sir. I didn't mean. He lifted one finger, and I fell silent. Where did you learn to speak Italian like that? He asked, not like a man making small talk. More like a man who always gets the answers he wants. My grandmother, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She taught me when I was little. Quote. I stepped back slowly, ready to disappear and never make the same mistake again. But before I could turn, he said something that made my stomach drop to my feet. Stay behind after we finish. I want to speak with you. For the next 2 hours, I felt like I was walking through fire. Every time I approached their table, I felt the tension like a physical weight on my shoulders. They spoke in Italian, sometimes Russian, sometimes a language I didn't even recognize. I pretended not to understand a word. I pretended to be the same quiet girl I'd always been. When they finally left, one by one, nodding toward Daario like he was the only person who mattered, I thought about running. Actually running. Out the back door. Into the cold night air, as far from that restaurant as the world would let me go. But then I thought about my mother. Her medicine bottles lined up like soldiers on our kitchen counter, the bills stacked behind them, her tired breathing filling our small apartment. The fear in her eyes every time a doctor shook their head. I couldn't run. I couldn't afford to. So when the room emptied, and only Daario remained, I forced my feet to move toward him. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. My legs felt unsteady as I lowered myself into the seat. He poured a second glass of wine and handed it to me. His eyes stayed on mine, unreadable in the dim light. I have a proposition, he said. One that might interest a woman with your talents. I didn't know it then, but everything in my life shifted in that moment. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every lie I'd told my mother about how things were fine, they all pointed me to this table. To this man, to this offer that terrified me and tempted me at the same time. I got home at 2 a.m. and sat on our worn couch with his business card in my hand. His name gleamed in the moonlight like a warning, or a promise. My mother slept in the bedroom, her weak breathing steady and slow. I thought about the offer, about what it could mean for us, for her, for the life we were drowning in. I thought about the way he watched me after everyone left, like I wasn't invisible at all, like he saw something in me I didn't even know I had. He gave me 3 days to decide, but danger doesn't wait for days. It doesn't wait at all. And when his text came the next morning, my driver will collect you at noon. We have matters to discuss. It felt less like an invitation and more like fate, closing its hand around me. I hadn't even realized yet. Danger wasn't the thing to fear. How he looked at me was. I kept staring at the message on my phone, hoping the words would change. They didn't. My stomach twisted with a mix of fear and something I refused to name. By the time the sleek black car pulled up in front of my building at noon, my hands were shaking so badly I had to hide them in my pockets. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. Daario sat inside alone. No guards, no shadows, just him. Dressed in a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, looking like danger dressed itself in elegance. "I hoped you'd come," he said. Hoped. The word unsettled me. Men like him didn't hope. They decided. The car began moving before I had even settled into my seat. I tried to keep my eyes on the passing streets, but I could feel his attention on me like a physical touch. "You look nervous," he observed. "Because I am," I answered honestly. His gaze didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened with interest. Good. People who aren't afraid of me usually should be. That didn't help. The restaurant he took me to wasn't anything like Tesoro Nascosto. It was small, quiet, hidden from the world. The kind of place where powerful men discussed things behind closed doors. He ordered for both of us without asking what I liked. Somehow it didn't come across as rude. Just expected. His world had its own rules. When the food arrived, he leaned back in his chair and studied me like I wasn't even trying to hide my panic. "Your circumstances," he said calmly, "are not a mystery to me. Your mother's illness, the cost of her treatment, the extra shifts you take, the bills you hide in your dresser. You do everything alone." My throat tightened. "How do you know that?" "I make it my job to know everything about people I'm considering bringing close." His tone stayed flat, emotionless. "Your loyalty is tied to your mother's survival. That makes you stable, predictable." Predictable. It stung more than it should have. "You want me to spy for you," I said. He lifted one brow. "Such an ugly word. I prefer information specialist." "Same thing." His mouth curved slightly. "You listen. You observe. You blend into places without drawing attention. It is a rare skill. And it could save lives, including your mother's." I felt the table tilt under me. "You're using her to force my hand." "I'm offering a solution," he corrected. "One your current life cannot provide." He slid a folder toward me. I opened it with shaky fingers. It contained my mother's medical records, treatment plans, doctors, notes. All things I had never told him. "This is the protocol her doctors recommended," he said. "It works, but it is expensive." "How did you get this?" My voice cracked. "When I want information, Julia, I get it." The truth landed like a stone in my chest. He wasn't giving me a choice. He was giving me consequences. "What if I say no?" I whispered. He took a slow sip of wine before responding. "Then nothing changes. You go back to holding your mother's hand while she gets worse. You pray for miracles while watching bills pile up. You hope someone will save you, but no one will." Anger and fear pulsed together under my skin. "You're manipulating me." "Yes," he said simply, "but I'm also telling you the truth." I didn't know what scared me more, his honesty or the fact that he didn't bother pretending to be anything else. "When would I start?" I asked quietly. "Tonight." My breath caught. "Tonight?" My schedule moved. "There's a meeting. Your presence will be useful." The words useful and presence twisted inside me in ways I didn't want to think about. "And my mother?" I asked, barely able to speak. "She is being transferred to Northwestern tomorrow morning. The best oncologists are waiting. This will happen regardless of your decision," he answered. Then his voice softened just a little. "But the rest, the full treatment, depends on us." Us. The word shouldn't have felt as heavy or intimate as it did. The drive to his mansion that evening felt unreal. A towering estate on Lakeshore Drive, glowing like a palace. He handed me a black cocktail dress earlier, telling me to wear it. When I stepped out of the car, the security guards looked at me like they were trying to place me in their world. Daario walked beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. "Remember," he murmured, "you're my cultural attaché. Smile when needed. Stay quiet. Listen to everything." Inside, the house glittered with chandeliers, gold accents, polished marble, and men whose power filled the air like smoke. I felt out of place and painfully aware of every part of my body. Paolo Mancini approached first, eyes sharp as a blade. "You've brought someone new," he said with a slow smile. "Interesting." Daario introduced me smoothly, his hand settling at the small of my back. The gesture looked casual. It didn't feel casual. Paolo switched to Italian and started making assumptions about who I was and what I was to Daario. I kept a polite expression, pretending not to understand. But Dario's jaw tightened slightly. Good. Throughout the night, I caught conversations in 3 languages. Some harmless, some dangerous, some about shipments, some about corruption, some about threats against Dario's men. Every time I whispered something to him, his eyes would darken in a way that made my heart race. "You're more valuable than I expected," he said at one point. Valuable. Another word that shouldn't have made me warm inside. Near the end of the evening, a woman approached me. Stunning, confident, dangerous in her own right. "Helena Veer," she said. "You've caused quite a stir tonight." Her eyes scanned me in a way that made my skin prickle. "I'm just helping with translations," I said. Helena smiled like she knew every lie I'd ever told. "We'll see." Her words stuck with me long after the night ended. By the time I returned home, exhausted and buzzing with fear and something else I couldn't name, one thing was painfully clear. This wasn't just a job. This was a world I had stepped into. And Daario Cortez wasn't just my employer. He was the danger no one survives unchanged. 3 weeks passed, and my life stopped feeling like my own. Every morning I woke up, made my mother breakfast, kissed her forehead, and then stepped into a world where every smile meant something hidden, and every conversation held a threat if I wasn't careful. I never planned to stay this long. I never planned to get good at it. But I did. By the end of the month, I had my own office inside Daario's downtown headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked over Chicago like the city was spread open beneath me, waiting to be read the same way I read people. His staff nodded when I passed. His security team knew my name. And Daario, he always seemed to appear at the exact moment I needed him, watching me with that unreadable expression. The strangest part was how normal it started to feel. That afternoon, I stood beside his desk while papers covered every inch of it. "The shipping manifests don't match," I explained, pointing at 2 pages. "When they switched to Ukrainian, they mentioned adding cargo after inspection. They're hiding something." Daario watched me quietly, that intense focus on his face that made me feel seen and exposed at the same time. "You prevented a $5 million problem," he said, stepping closer. "You're becoming essential to me, Julia." Essential, not useful, not helpful, essential. The word made my heart skip. "I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do," I said softly. He shook his head. "No, you're doing far more." I didn't know how to respond. The room felt smaller. The air felt warmer. And I couldn't tell if the shift was in him or in me. That night, he took me to dinner at a small place with dim lights, where the city noise faded into something calming. He dismissed his security detail for the first time ever. Just him and me. Alone. "Why did you hire me?" I asked as soon as our drinks arrived. "There are thousands of translators, people with degrees, experience, connections to your world." He smiled slightly, swirling his wine. "You corrected a dangerous man's Italian without fear," he said. "You told the truth even when it could have hurt you. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" I blinked. "So because I corrected someone's grammar, I'm here?" "Not grammar," he corrected gently. "Instinct. Courage. Intelligence. You didn't think about consequences. You spoke from honesty. That tells me more than any resume ever could." I looked away because the way he said it felt too intimate, too warm for the man who had blackmailed me into this job and yet somehow protected me every day since. The conversation shifted to childhood memories. He spoke about Naples and losing his mother young. I spoke about my grandmother teaching me languages like they were treasure. I laughed more than I expected. He watched my laugh like it was something valuable. On the drive home, the lights of Lake Michigan reflected off the car windows, and I felt something inside me loosen. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of my old life, I admitted. And yet you stay, he said quietly. Is it because of your mother's treatment, or is it something else? Quote. I didn't answer. I didn't know how. The next morning, at the hospital, my mother practically glowed when she saw me. The doctor says I might go home next week, she said happily. Can you imagine? Home. I couldn't stop staring at how healthy she looked. Stronger, brighter, alive. This job of yours must pay extremely well, she continued, giving me a knowing smile. The clothes, the perfume, the security guards watching my room like I'm a queen. And this boss of yours, the one you mention without even realizing it. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Mom, he's just my employer. Sweetheart, she said softly, taking my hand. I may be sick, but I'm not clueless. A man doesn't go this far unless he cares. Before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. Daario stepped inside. My mother lit up instantly. She loved him already. He spoke with her for a few minutes before joining me in the hallway. You didn't have to come, I whispered. I wanted to, he said softly. My mother died young. I remember what it felt like to watch helplessly. I won't let that happen to you. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to do with that kind of vulnerability coming from him. I didn't know where to put it inside myself. The next week, everything changed again. I was working late in Daario's office when security sent me a message. Helena Veer requesting access to the executive floor. Helena. Elegant, sharp, dangerous Helena. She wasn't supposed to be in the city. She was in Miami. Or so she'd said. Let her up, I told security, even though something in my chest tightened with warning. When the elevator doors opened, Helena rushed out looking frantic, hair messy, makeup ruined. Thank God you're here, she gasped. I need to see Daario. There's been a breach. Alarm shot through me. I stood quickly. What happened? But she didn't answer. She shoved past me and headed straight for Daario's computer. I need to access his secure server, she snapped. There's no time. Something felt wrong. Too wrong. I moved to block her. Helena, stop. Whatever you need to say, you can say it to me. Quote. Her face changed instantly. Gone was the panic. In its place was cold, sharp calculation. You're more perceptive than I thought, she said. Her hand slipped into her purse. My pulse jumped. I pressed the silent alarm under my desk. Who sent you? I asked. Her eyes narrowed with amusement. You really don't know how important you've become, do you? He trusts you more than anyone. That makes you the perfect crack in his armor. Before she could say more, the elevator chimed. Daario walked in with 2 guards. He listened to everything with a calmness that scared me more than Helena's betrayal. My instincts were correct, he said quietly, his eyes meeting mine. You saw through her. And for the first time since the night we met, I realized something terrifying and powerful. He trusted me, completely, dangerously, irrevocably, and I wasn't sure what frightened me more, his trust, or the part of me that wanted to protect him just as fiercely. The morning of the warehouse meeting felt colder than it should have. I stood beside Daario near the lakefront, the wind cutting through my jacket, carrying the smell of metal and water. The containers around us towered like walls, hiding us from the rest of the city. His men moved in the shadows, silent and alert. Every step echoed the tension that had been building since Helena's betrayal. They requested your presence, Daario said, his gaze fixed ahead. After Helena told them about your role, they want to see for themselves if you're a weakness or an advantage. My pulse quickened. I'm not a negotiator. No, he said softly, but you're the one they fear most now. Fear me. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but the look on his face stopped me. He wasn't joking. He wasn't exaggerating. He meant it. We reached a clearing between the containers where a table had been set up. The Albanians were already waiting, led by Enver, a tall man with sharp eyes that seemed to cut through people. His stare lingered on me longer than necessary. "So this is the famous linguist," he said in Albanian. "Pretty. I expected someone colder." Quote, "He didn't think I understood. He wanted a reaction. I gave him none." "Speak English," Daario said calmly as he took his seat. "If we're doing business today, we stay respectful." Enver only smirked and switched to Italian, then Russian, making offensive comments about me, about Daario, about our dynamic. I kept my expression neutral. I had learned how to hold still even when my heart raced. But when his lieutenant leaned close to him and whispered their actual plan in Serbian, when they said they wanted to kill Daario tonight, when they assumed I wouldn't understand a word, that was the moment I decided I had heard enough. I leaned forward slowly. "Maybe you should reconsider discussing assassination plans in front of the target," I said in flawless Serbian, "especially when this warehouse has full audio surveillance." Everything stopped. Hands moved toward weapons, chairs scraped, silence grew heavy and sharp. Daario's men stepped forward. Enver's eyes widened, not with fear, but with a new kind of respect. "You speak our language." Quote, "She understands everything," Daario said, rising with a deadly calm. "And unlike Helena, she knows loyalty." What happened next wasn't a movie moment or dramatic fight. It was negotiation. Cold, hard, and final. They backed down, slowly, reluctantly. But they did. Because for the first time, they weren't only afraid of Daario. They were afraid of me. When the meeting ended and the Albanians left, Daario turned to me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Something between admiration and relief. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You brought me here," I whispered back. "I had to make sure you walked out." A strange silence settled. Heavy with meaning, neither of us dared speak in front of his men. 2 weeks later, I moved into a high-rise apartment overlooking the lake. My mother's health stabilized with treatment, and I set her up in the apartment next door. A connecting hallway linked our homes. For the first time in years, I felt like we were breathing again. Life with Daario wasn't peaceful. It was intense, unpredictable, and filled with moments where he would step unnecessarily close just to see if I'd step back. I never did. One evening, I stood on the balcony, watching the sunset paint Chicago in gold. I didn't hear him walk up behind me, but I felt him, the warmth of his presence, the quiet confidence in each step. "You still admire the view," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "It's better than the one I used to have," I said, with a small smile. "Everything is." He leaned against the railing beside me, eyes fixed on the horizon. "The family council met today." My heart tightened. "About what?" "You," he said simply. "They want to offer you partnership status, real authority, real power, equal decision-making, profit shares, permanent protection." I turned to him, stunned. Partnership means I can never walk away. He didn't flinch. "It means choosing this life, permanently, and choosing me." The words hit me like a soft blow, not painful but deep, honest. I felt the shift between us. Something long building, finally breaking through. "What do you want, Julia?" he asked. I stepped closer to him until the distance between us was only a breath. "I want to stop pretending this is just a job," I whispered. His hand reached for mine, fingers brushing my skin with a gentleness I never expected from a man who ruled half of Chicago. "Then stop pretending," he murmured. His lips met mine in a kiss that felt like the last missing piece clicking into place. Months of tension melted into one moment that made everything, every danger, every risk, suddenly worth it. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "You once corrected my Italian," he said with a faint smile. "I should have known then that you were going to change everything. And you once told me I was predictable," I teased softly. His fingers lifted my chin. "Not anymore." I laughed quietly, leaning into him as the city lights flickered alive below us. "I should warn you," I whispered, brushing my lips against his. "I'll correct your Italian for the rest of your life." He smiled, pulling me closer. "I'm counting on it." Quote, "And in that moment, standing above the city that used to swallow me whole, I understood something I never expected. I hadn't fallen into danger. I had stepped into my future.